like it better when you're close to me. But I want you happy like you're supposed to be. I can't help myself, I'm getting overwhelmed.
All right. Welcome to the Eighth Note Sessions. I'm Devin Mullen.
And I'm Mike Jamil.
And tonight, we're joined in conversation with Jamila Nicolas, engineer at large, student of the law, and generally badass engineer. Jam, thanks for joining us. How are we doing?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Not too bad.
Doing great.
So I wanted to hear about really what it's like working in audio right now, especially in live sound. We're in the middle of a pandemic. People are crazy.
Yes.
And we're the last bastion, the entertainment. How's it going?
I think that statement you said, people are crazy, is exactly how it's going. And and that can mean a lot of positive and negative things, but luckily it's been pretty positive. When things started opening up again, live events kind of were thrown up all over engineers, and we kind of actually had a shortage. A lot of people got real jobs during the pandemic, very amazing engineers that I know found really good 9-to-5s. It's very weird, but because of that, it's been very good. It's been very chaotic in a good way. I've had shows back to back. They keep coming, and yeah, it's insane.
I know right now you're working at Ironworks. You're also, if I remember correctly, helping to run an opera?
Yeah, I'm doing Carmen at Buff State College, Rockwell Hall, and I think that's in like 2 weeks. So, it's if anybody knows about production, it's a week of rehearsals. So I'm going to hear the same songs over and over again, and it'll be in my head for at least the next year. I guarantee it.
The good thing is, if they ever need an actor, like last minute, you're going to know all the lines and every scene intimately.
So there's a reason why I'm in sound, and it's because I can't sing and or play instruments. So we're going to keep it at that. But yeah, I guess if they really needed to, I could.
Voice of God, mic accompaniment.
All right, bring your iPad down on the stage so that you can run the faders in between scenes, okay?
That's a great thing to put on a resume.
There you go.
Good thing yeah.
I don't think anyone would be able to top that either.
No, definitely not.
So there's a pretty big disparity, though, in between the sonic requirements of an opera and, more of a really high-energy, band-centric venue like the Ironworks. Could you speak a little bit on that and just how the processes are different?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because they are so different. Going from Ironworks where the shows will go up to like 2 a.m. and then an opera that will end at 10 p.m. sharp. And, besides, the time differences, the level of energy, like you said, is always so different, especially with operas and you're working with the union, there's a different sense of professionalism. So I'm not saying there isn't when it comes to like club stuff, but, it's, you get there, you do warm-ups for an hour and, and then you rehearse, you stop and you do your thing in an opera. But as for Ironworks, it's like, tours walk in, they're like, what's up? Let's do a sound check. Yeah, and the energy is just like, it's so different. But I love both of it a lot.
I mean, would you attribute that in part to how compartmentalized in theater and opera the teching process is? Like there aren't people wandering around the house while you're doing tech rehearsal. Ideally,
right.
if there's
ideally
a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, in a bar or something, I mean, there are people coming in, checking out the sound check and all that.
Sorry to interrupt you. I know. So at Ironworks, because of the way we run, I have been lucky enough to have like no patrons drinking or anything during sound check.
Nice.
But yeah, it's really nice. So the company I work for, they organize it so well and schedule it properly where I actually have like a couple hours to load these guys in, get a good sound check. It's nice. It could be loud as hell. And it's all good. And then doors open. So I've been very lucky. But I did start, like, in the beginning of my live sound career, I did do sound at Dinosaur Barbecue. And it's a pain in the butt. You know, because the drunk people are eating like wings and ribs, and they're like, "What are you doing?" You know, I'm like, "I don't know. I'm setting up a microphone."
Hey, keep your greasy fingers off my board. Shoo!
Exactly.
I just want to sing a song. No, you can't sing a song. You're not on the bill.
Exactly. So I
It's too
I have
loud
my fair
over
share.
here. Could you turn it down?
Yeah, that's wow. PTSD. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's part of sort of every engineer's coming up, though, working like the space that is really not a music venue and just figuring it out?
I don't think you can be a sound engineer like in the highest sense without experiencing that. You know, a lot of the greatest sound engineers I've ever met while they were touring and played at our venue, you know, they always tell me stories about their first like bar gig, their club gig. You know, my mentors out here in Buffalo, they did club gigs for like decades, you know, and then, you know, found their way into like the opera scene, you know. So yeah, I think it's definitely conducive. Like, you need to work at a crappy bar and do sound there and cry a little bit, and then, you know, find your way up.
And to be clear, I love the food at Dinosaur Barbecue. I will go there happily any night and have a plate of ribs. We love Dinosaur Barbecue.
We do. We do.
So yeah, it's what I like about your career too is that you seem to have again this very wide experience covering different avenues of performance, such as band shows to opera. You're also in IATSE, the union. What is that experience like? Because there's this whole I guess demographic of the industry that are hyper independent. You know, you're running your own studio, you're completely freelance. What's the trade-off to be made? Positive pros and cons with joining the union.
You know, I think the biggest positive from it, you know, is the networking. I've met a lot of fantastic people, you know, working shows at Darien Lake, the Key Bank Center, you know, kind of all over the place. But I would say that's the biggest positive. And a lot of the people that, you know, are on tour, they specifically ask for audio people, and there's a very like small amount of IATSE members that, you know audio. So I got lucky, and because of my experience, I'm able to hang out with like the audio engineers during these big shows. So, you know, that's like, I think besides networking, that would be the biggest, not con, pro, because I get to see their equipment. I get to see how they set up. I have awesome conversations with them. I'm friends with a lot of them, like online still. And, you know, we stay connected. As for the cons, you know, I think a lot of the cons come from, you know, a lot of stereotyping or like racial profiling, you know, misogyny, all the fun stuff. You know, I've definitely been, you know, spoken down to, belittled and whatnot because, you know, for whatever reason. And one can only assume it's gender, race, and, you know, sexuality. So sexual preference.
For the viewers at home, that's something very, very important to note, is that audio is a highly, highly male-dominated field at this point. So yes. It's an uphill battle to make inroads in for anyone, but especially people who aren't men. You know, how is that sort of not shaped? Because I'd like to think that we're all able to be stronger than our circumstances at the end of the day. But how has that sort of influenced your story and your journey through audio?
It's always such a difficult subject to talk about because ultimately, as raw as I can possibly be, it's kind of like hardened me, you know? When I first started off, I just thought that's how it went, you know? like there's just it's a male dominant world, like I felt like a lot of the experiences that I had, at first felt very negative, like, why am I doing this? I feel like I constantly run into situations where someone is telling me something that's very condescending and whatnot. And I think because of those experiences, it's pushed me to reassert myself as a female sound engineer. So as weird as it sounds, I'm glad it happened because, I go in with so much more confidence now because I know what I'm doing. I had to go through a lot of mental journeys to try to reassert myself, reassure myself. Yeah, so.
And I think you've taken those struggles quite to heart. As we talked about in our pre-interview conversation, you're also studying pre-law.
Yeah.
Really with an intense focus on that struggle, not just as it pertains to working in entertainment, but as it sort of intersects with our very social fabric.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously there's only so many hours in a day and only one life to live. But
yeah.
Do you have some kind of combination of law and technology and art that you want to sort of craft together into your life and into your higher aspirations or your dreams?
I mean, absolutely. I think it's funny because when I told a lot of my sound engineer friends that I decided to go to school to become an attorney, they kind of were like, those are such different fields. And yeah, like ultimately they are, but, there's a connection there. And the biggest connection, especially since I'm going into law for the social justice aspect, is to fight for like people of color, the underprivileged, just the whole spectrum of not basically being like a cis white male. And in the music industry, it's very important, to highlight those certain things. And I guess to answer your question, how does one combine law and the music industry as a sound engineer? And I think it's just being able to recognize, when someone is being mistreated for who they are, for their skin color, for their gender, and being able to eliminate that through like the process of law, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Because otherwise whatever recourse you're supposed to take, it's either not illuminated or just you don't know what to do. You're also first generation.
Yes.
Too, yes. Your parents, you said, are from the Philippines. It said on your Facebook you're from Los Angeles initially.
Yeah, I'm all over.
How'd you end up here?
That was the same. I had the same question burning in my mind, and I was trying to resist like asking that because everyone who moves to Buffalo usually has an interesting story because no one thinks as much as I love Buffalo, no one thinks our city is like a destination.
To be super honest with you, I think that LA is way too glamorized for what it is. And I'm not saying I hate it because I love it. I have it tattooed on my arm, but it's definitely California has a lot of issues right now, and that's another conversation, I think. But I essentially had to get out of there because I felt like it was just, too condensed, and there was not enough originality, not enough like genuine personalities out there, and I just felt like I had to leave. Just like everybody has to leave their hometown, basically.
I mean, not having ever been there, but just LA's famous, so everyone knows a little bit about it. It seems
they don't know the bad parts, but yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it really is a tale of two cities in that case, and certainly in the pandemic, but also over the past few decades, I think the widening gap between the have and have-nots has just been growing more and more severe, and it's bad now.
Yeah, it's really sad, actually. Yeah. But my parents moved there for opportunity, and didn't really get it, So I'm very grateful for the struggles that they endured for my brother and I. But as I got older, I realized that they really didn't get to live their life to the fullest. They're still around, by the way. Didn't mean to say like they passed on or anything, but I feel kind of bad because the way they were treated and the struggles that they went through in a city like LA, like they didn't get a chance to live, and it's kind of sad. Yeah.
Do you take it upon yourself then to like live doubly to make up for that kind of thing, or is it? I mean, can you even undo that sort of level of inflation?
Yes and no. My parents are they're both my mother and father are both very amazing, and they've always had a positive outlook on things despite the factors, and but I'm trying my hardest to live a good life, to essentially like show them that what they did good, obviously not trying to not do what they want, but because otherwise I'd be a doctor or some crazy shit like that. But,
parents always have like really crazy ideas on what we should be.
Always. Always. So actually what's really funny is that they when I finally told my parents I was going to go to school for law, they were freaking out. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what kind of lawyer?" I was like, "Civil rights," and they're like, "What's that?" Because they didn't grow up in that. Yeah.
So moving forward, then. Keeping this idea that so many of us in this country are really immersed in our own struggle, and the way out seems to be from solidarity and good allyship and all, basically coming together and continuing that fight, even when you do have lifelong setbacks, as you sort of allude to. Do you think things are getting better? Do you think there's cause for optimism in this? Because it's been a tough week. It's been a very tough week.
It's been a really, really rough week, and I think it's that whole situation. I mean, I feel like we're talking about the same thing. The big elephant in the room was the verdict for Kyle Rittenhouse, and I was very angry when I found that out. But learning about the legal system, it's so not surprising, and it's disgusting how not surprising it is. But to answer your question, I think things are getting better in a smaller sense. I feel like community-wise, each city, each company, companies that are they're actually trying. So yes, when it comes to that sense, like larger things, like like that situation, it's tough to say. Obviously, just going full circle here, like things had to happen for people to like be aware of it, for things to finally push forward, to move forward. And so, I think it's tough to say, but I think a lot of people are starting to become more aware of, the horrible things that happen in our system. And it takes people like you guys and, people that side with us to try to educate and inform people properly about like what needs to happen,
I was reading a book by historian Howard Zinn a few weeks ago, and he says that when considering American history, it's often best not to look strictly at the narratives of oppression and genocide and violence and inequities as being indicative of the American character, but rather the community support networks, the resistance to that, the rising above it, as more indicative of who we are.
Right.
And that's what gets me through it. Sort of jumping off this idea of rising above, is, not going to get too much into that statement, but this idea of rising above. What sparks joy in you in audio, in making these connections and traveling around and making your world a bigger place?
Man, I think the whole thing is the reason why I'm so into it. I think every aspect of it, besides the networking, I mean, even like the nerdy side of it, learning microphones, as you guys both know, like microphones are so cool,
They are
freaking awesome. Yeah, they're awesome, right? Like they do cool shit. They're the reason why we can talk right now,
I wish I could have just like a huge mic locker of like a variety of everything.
Yeah, just all the condensers, all the dynamic mics, all of it. Me too. And mine is slowly growing, and it's what I spend all my money on. But yeah, I love the technical aspect of it besides the networking. I like the routing and the engineering of boards. It's amazing that somebody made that. It's the reason why we have entertainment and production. It's the reason why we can have this conversation right now, so I think that's, I find great joy in learning about the genius that goes into equipment and the way it produces something so phenomenal.
It is pretty magical, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Do you enjoy the problem-solving aspect of doing live sound in particular versus other forms of engineering?
I love it. I absolutely love it. And, what I love the most about it is that there's always a solution and that there are many ways to find the solution, but I will say there is a downfall of the problem solving, and it's usually people that make it a little more difficult. It's not necessarily like a malfunction in equipment and trying to diagnose it. It's actually like certain people that make it a little less fun, I guess.
Hey, dude, quit turning your guitar amp up. We set the levels in sound check. Leave it alone.
Do you know that? Do you know that by experience? Because it's very notorious. Guitarists are so notorious for having the loudest amp.
I
I'm not
did
gonna
this
say
horrible show like a long time ago. Not a horrible show. The show was fun, but the venue was not like a proper venue. And sometimes it's fun being in non-traditional venues, but the room sounded like garbage. I was very green and had like begged, borrowed, and stealed enough stuff to cobble together a PA, and it was just enough where I could amplify the vocals and like a couple small things. And I was like, guys, it's a small room.
Right.
Let's get the amp set. I don't need to mic those up. Those go higher than my PA system does. Okay.
Oh no.
We need to hear your vocals.
Disaster.
And got it all sounding beautiful. And then 2 songs in, the lead guitarist cranked it. And then all of his friends came up to me and they're like, "Why can't we hear the vocals? All we hear is the guitar." I'm like, "See that dial right there? See that one right there?" I will say that I've worked with lately, which is very surprising, consistent, really good guitarists that are aware of stage bleed, and it's amazing. They'll bring panels to block the sound from coming out, and it's like, wow, you know what you're doing, man. That's wonderful.
But yeah, and and there will be that time where I have to do like the parent voice on talkback. Like, if you don't turn down your guitar amp right now, I will mute you completely. Oh my gosh, which has happened before, and you have to just tell them, and hopefully they listen.
Right, because as musicians, it's so important to learn how to trust the person doing your sound, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who have control over how your performance is translated to the audience. And
Absolutely.
if you give them a hard time, you're making their day worse, you're making your day worse, and you're making your fans' experience worse.
Yes.
And if you could learn to like work with them and trust them, then it's gonna be a much more relaxing show. And frankly, as a musician, like to try and do sound and play together at the same time is horrible.
Oh, yeah,
it's
that.
so awesome having someone who's running the sound. It just takes your mind, it takes a lot of pressure off your mind. Trust your sound people.
Yeah, can you just tell the whole world that, or all of the musicians on the entire planet?
Well, I can tell everyone who's listening today, at least.
I think I'm gonna hire a biplane with one of those banners. Trust your
Yes.
sound, people.
No.
Fly it over the next
man.
Bills game.
Oh yeah, I truly appreciate musicians that just have it together and they're very aware of it. There's usually somebody in the band, and I feel like that might be you, Mike. That's like the technical person of the band. That's the person I usually talk to, and for some reason it's either like the keyboardist or the bassist, which is odd enough. Yeah, which is odd enough. I worked with an,
Here's our stage plot. Here's our ins and outs.
I have to give a shout out really quick to a band called Jaunty from Colorado that played at Ironworks recently, and they sent me the most amazing input list. They're like, these are the mics we have. We like to low pass and high pass at these frequencies. I literally just had a plug and play, and it was
Wow.
It was fantastic. Yeah, they knew exactly what they were doing, and I appreciate that. So if you're a musician, please have a stage plot and an input list, and talk to your sound engineer and trust them. So
What other things? So if there's some new musicians listening that are just kind of getting their feet wet and just kind of exploring the scene and how it works, what are the things do they need to be mindful of or discuss with their sound prior to actually playing on stage?
I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. You pretty much have to trust your sound engineer, but that goes to say that the sound engineer knows what they're doing. So it's 50-50, but I think the biggest thing is informing them of what you need. So like you said, a stage plot, maybe what kind of microphones you need, how many mic stands, what kind of mic stands, am I miking your drum kit? Those are the biggest things I think are important, and just an equipment list and a rider, or any fair warnings, like your bass has a short and it's gonna buzz at 600 hertz. That would be nice to know, stuff like that. Just being fully prepared for what it would be like if you did sound for your band. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot of moving pieces into getting that right. So it's definitely worth taking that time to prepare. Thank you for that valuable info.
Yeah, man. And if you have any other questions,
Well, Jim, I got one more because we're just about at time here, and I want to thank you for making time to join us tonight. I know you have a very, very busy schedule, so this has been a treat.
Yeah.
Just talking about the local scene a little bit. Who are some acts that you really like working with, or some really standout shows you've seen?
So I've actually been working with this phenomenal band, Breakfast for Dinner. I'm actually wearing their crew neck right now.
I've heard about them. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been working with Breakfast for Dinner a lot. They're a pop band that's up and coming, and they're so damn talented. And I'm not just saying that because we're good friends, but they're a local band that does exactly what we just spoke about. They have their stage plot, they have their input list, and even though they're not big yet, they decided to hire me as their front of house engineer, which shows that they care, because they want the best sound possible. So they're amazing. They have a show coming up in Corning, New York, and they're I don't know. I see good, amazing, big things for them. But so that's who I work with personally. But Aqueous, as everybody knows, fantastic musicians. My goodness, what you know,
They're fantastic live.
They're amazing. It's insane. And I know a lot of the techs that work with them personally too. So, you know, they just did a show recently as well where I pretty much babysat, and it was nice to listen to them. There's a lot of bands in Buffalo, man. Oh my gosh. A lot of really good ones. And I'm surprised we're not being promoted as much as like a live sound, you know, live music city, because it's nothing but live music out here.
I know. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, Buffalo occupies this negotiated space because it really is a nexus for a lot of really, really big names and really big acts. And there is stuff coming out of Buffalo right now, especially in the hip-hop scene, that is making, you know, waves around the world and nationally.
Right.
But you're right. There is this sort of state of invisibility that I think the majority of people sort of live in. You know,
yeah,
I assume if we keep all, you know, pushing together, we'll break through that seal and we'll be something real special.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are from New York? How often do you see the Statue of Liberty? I don't know. Maybe once a year when I drive to the other side of the state. I'm from Buffalo. Where's that?
So I have to tell you guys something, and don't get mad, okay? When I first moved, like, or when I first heard about Buffalo, like, it was in the movie Bruce Almighty. That's the first. I thought it was a fake city. I really did. I'm not even kidding. And then, you know, I watched that when I was a kid, and like, turns out I'm going to end up living in this fake city, you know? So it was very weird, you know, to find out it was real.
But affirming, your life's just like a movie. Wow.
Wow. That's the way the cookie crumbles, man.
I guess. All right. Well, I think that's our time for tonight. Jam, thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And with that, I'm Davin Mullen.
I'm Mike Shamil.
And this has been the 8th Note Sessions. Catch you next time.